All right, welcome back to the Reconcile podcast. Today we have with us a special guest, a very good friend of mine, Breanne Houston. We met several months ago with the HB 570 bill that was being introduced in Tennessee, and it was a little bit of a whirlwind getting to meet her. And then we ended up driving to Nashville together and advocating for equal protections for the unborn. And yeah, thank you so much for being here with us today, Breanne.
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. This is an honor.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing right now in life.
Okay. Well, wow. That's a big question. So currently I am the regional director for the Knoxville area for Alliance Family Services, which is a unapologetically gospel-centered organization that focuses on serving women who have unplanned pregnancies. And then, of course, our mission is to share the gospel and save babies. That's the very condensed mission. We have a much, bigger mission, but those are our two things that when we look at what we're doing, are those the things that we're doing? And that's what we go back to. But we are a medical clinic. And so that is our focus, is serving women. We do prenatal care up to 20 weeks. We do well visits and things, but medically excellent. And we want to be able to meet that need that women have when they have unplanned pregnancies. And automatically, like I did when I had an abortion when I'm 18, and I know we'll get into that later, I just went to the place that I knew would help me, and it was Planned Parenthood. And so we want to really go toe to toe with them and tell women the actual truth, which is not something that happens at those clinics. And we want to be able to meet the need and really just be there for them. And so that's the goal. And my mission, I feel like the Lord laid on my heart several years ago, was really to see, how do we end this thing? Like, millions of babies are being slaughtered every single year in our country, but also in the world. I mean, a whole third of a generation is being killed in our world every single year, and nobody is doing anything about it. And so, I mean, there are people, do not get me wrong, just like every hard thing, the Holocaust, there were people that were doing things, but as a whole, the world was pretty silent, and so that's just how I felt. I'm like, what can we do to end this thing? Not just propagate what's actually happening and regulate and do all that, but like, how do we end it? And so that's always been the conviction of my heart. And so that's why I partnered with Alliance, because they care about, yes, serving women, mercy ministry, serving the community, and meeting physical needs, but also they want to end this thing. Like, we want to work ourselves out of a job.
Amen. Yes, amen to that. Yeah, so take us back as far back as you want to go and tell us about your story. How did you end up having an abortion? What was your background? Were you raised in a Christian home? Just start wherever you want and take us through that journey.
Yeah. So I wasn't raised in a Christian per se home. I was born in the early 80s. So like, our culture, even though it was still depraved, it just, culturally was a lot different than what we face today. And so, all these things that are just almost expected that kids do was not, like premarital sex. That was not talked about. I mean, maybe it was, but like at my age, that was still taboo. And of course, not like it wasn't happening, but it just was different. Now parents have kind of, I feel like, well, kids are going to do what they're going to do. And I just don't think it was like that then. So I wasn't raised in a Christian home, but my parents, I always say, raised us to be moral, good citizens. Grew up in the Jehovah's Witness religion. And so I went kind of a part of that, never baptized. And I feel like the Lord really protected me from getting too involved in that religion, because that was not where he wanted me, or really anyone. But that's a whole nother testimony, a whole nother story.
Right.
I went through high school. I figured out that I wanted to work in TV, and we had a TV station at school. And I ended up, by my senior year, was in charge of that, and really loved TV and film and just the logistics of it. I was just really, really good at that. And so I knew that I wanted to go to film school. I figured it out last minute. applied to one school that I wanted to go to, and I was the first to go to college in my family. I felt like there was a lot kind of riding on that. And I just knew what my future would hold, right? I was that A type. I have to control everything. I know what I'm going to do. This is what my life is going to look like. And the Lord has really kind of healed me from that, actually. But it was nothing can get in my way. Well, I got pregnant my first semester of college. So I still had that mindset of like, I can't do this. My mom, they didn't bring up abortion ever. I mean, it wasn't a topic, right? We didn't have social media. We hardly had the internet. Like we had a phone that was attached to the car. Like it was just such a different time than we have now. Did remember my mom saying, talking about abortion and how it was wrong. So like I knew that it was a wrong thing to do. I knew that it ended the life of a child, but I didn't understand all of the things. Like I don't even know if I paid attention to the video where it shows you the development of a baby, right?
Yeah.
So I was a terrible student also, but I just didn't understand it. But I knew that Planned Parenthood is where you go to get help. So
Yeah.
in California at the time, there was like this 72-hour law where you had to go and get a consultation, and then they gave me an ultrasound. And then I could make my appointment for, a few days later. So I remember going on like a Friday, and it was just a nice feel. Like everyone was so kind. It felt light. It was going to the doctor. I went in and they did an ultrasound, and I couldn't really see what they were looking at. They said I was 8 weeks along. So when I'm looking at the ultrasound, I'm like, well, what are you looking at? And they showed me, and they pointed to this little tiny dot on the screen, and they said, that's it. And I remember like looking in and going, I don't know what you're talking about. But for me, it was great. I caught it in time. I can't even see it on the screen. Like it can't be that big of a deal. And so I felt relief and left, made my appointment for my abortion, came back the next Monday. And I remember it was in December because it was finals week. And I was supposed to take a math final that night. And I remember asking at some point, I can't remember which appointment, but saying, I have a math final that night. Am I going to be able to go and take that? And them saying, oh yeah, you'll be fine. You'll leave here, you can go home and rest, and then you can go take your final. No big deal. And I'm like, oh, okay, whatever, 18 years old. I mean, I'm a baby. And
Yeah.
so I went to the appointment. I had a friend and my boyfriend take me. And of course, he paid for it. He had to borrow money. I mean, it's just so sad when you look back on it and you know what you know. It's so sad that this poor guy, he had no say. He was still in high school. It's just so tragic. But it is, it's what happened. And I go in, and of course I go by myself, and there's everything's different. It's dark, and they're hurried because it's abortion day. Again, none of this that I understand or know at the time, but I know the process now. And it's very, just completely night and day, right? It's like darkness, right? Satan comes as an angel of light. That was the first day. That's where the fake peace came from. And then, of course, on abortion day, it's dark, it's chaotic, it's rushed, it's hurried. And so that was the process. And I remember just being kind of scared and nervous and going through the process. And for women who are listening who have been there, like it's a noise you won't forget. It's just something that you just don't forget. And then when it was all over, they sat me in this kind of waiting room while the drugs wore off to make sure that, other things didn't happen and that I was okay.
Right.
And I remember passing out, sitting there, and just feeling like when I came to, just really off and not feeling good. But I remember, if you've come out of, that kind of, I don't know what they gave me, but like
Yeah.
anesthesia or whatever they gave me, just feeling really loopy. And so I left. I was kind of shuffled out the back door, left, still feeling loopy. Like I was still drugged up. So like this idea that abortion is healthcare is just the most ludicrous thing. Nobody called to check in on me. They just wanted to make sure I had a ride home. So the liability was there. Just all of it. It's like none of it was what we would expect from going and getting our tonsils out even. And yet this major surgery happens and this is the care that is given. So praise God, I didn't have any crazy side effects or anything like that physically. Instantaneously, I knew that there was a part of me that I would never get back. And I felt lonely and I felt just disconnected from reality. And that went on for quite some time. I did not make it to my final. And I finished out the rest of the week with school and then went home for Christmas break. It was like a 6-week thing. So I went home and I worked and like life just went on. And then I went back to school in the spring. And mind you, nobody knows. Like 2 people on the planet even know that this happened. And I went back in the spring. And of course, by then, like my relationship with my boyfriend was torn. It just all together, just really, really toxic life that I was living in this facade of Orange County, California, have your life together, going to college. You have to do what you have to do, smile on your face, right?
Yeah.
And um and so that is actually the time when I ended up joining the rowing team. My roommate, I don't think she was there at the time, but I had friends on that team. And my now husband, Jesse, was on the team as well. And so we got to be really good friends during that. And he introduced me to Jesus and I like totally fell in love with him, but he wanted to not be dating me. So that's a whole thing. But we're married. So I won. It's fine.
Yeah, you did.
I was right the whole time. But I just loved how he loved people. He was just, it wasn't perfect in any way, but he was different than any other guy that I was friends with or knew. And so I just was so drawn to him. And that went on for like 6 months where we were really close friends. But I told him like 3 different times, but I like you and I want to date you. Anyways, it's really sweet. But it was through him that I came to know Jesus. And before we started dating, I had shared with him. And so he was the one that told me, like, Christ can save you from that. Like, that's a sin and he can redeem that. And so that, when I went to church, it was on I think it was Easter that year. And I went to church and I heard the gospel for the first time and just fell at Jesus's feet. And my sanctification process was really long because we weren't in a church but we kept going to his church on the Sundays that he was at home with his parents. And I just kind of grew and learned about Jesus as much as I could.
Yeah.
And it was really years and years later, once we were married and we were living close to that church, that I was like all in. And I had lost friends because I was walking with the Lord and, all of that in that time period. But
so let me interrupt you for just a second. So how long was it until, like, from when you guys met to when you got married?
Yeah. So we met actually the first day of school, our freshman year, and we were just friends. I liked his roommate. It's just like this. It's just like that's a whole different podcast. But we met the first day of school. And so we were just friends for a long time. So we graduated college 4 years later. We dated and then were engaged. And so we got married. I think we were dating 5 years when we, 4.5 years when we got married. And then, so
I'm just always curious about people's stories. So, and I think that's so sweet that he's the one that introduced you to Jesus and even
Yes.
just walked you through, forgiveness for that,
Oh, yeah.
being the first one to do that. That's so sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And he's incredible. So
Yeah.
my biggest fan, I'm his biggest fan. And so
Yeah.
thankful for that.
Yeah. So, and then you said, okay, so you guys were going to church, but inconsistently. So when he
Yeah.
was home on school breaks, you would go with
Yeah.
him, but maybe not
Yeah.
really having someone to truly disciple you into what Christianity and what that really even means.
That's right. Yeah. Like his mom would like pour into me anytime I would see her because she was probably the only Christian I knew outside of Jesse. And yeah, it was just kind of like inconsistent. But
Hmm.
I mean, I watched him and he corrected me. You know, I had a foul mouth and he would be like, hey, no. Like there were certain things I'd say. He's like, don't ever say that again. And if you know my husband, you're like, he's just not
Yeah.
like that. But there were certain things where he's like, no, we
Yeah.
absolutely will not be talking like that, or we will not be taking the Lord's name in vain, or we will not. And it's just things that I didn't know, but he would teach me along the way. So,
Yeah. So,
yeah.
yeah, it's also interesting to hear you talk about this was in California. Is
Yeah.
that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear someone say that because they go all in for Jesus that they lose friends. Because
Oh,
in the South,
yeah.
it's like, well, I feel like it's changing now, but at least when I grew up, it was
Yeah.
almost the opposite. If you're not going to church and a Christian, then you're kind of the odd man out. That's the
Yeah.
way I grew up. And so it's always interesting to hear about the culture difference in California,
Yeah.
because even then you weren't even necessarily as strong as you are now in your
Right.
beliefs and convictions and the way that you're walking out things now that are very unpopular. And we'll get to that
Yeah.
at the end. But yeah, I just find that so interesting. And it's hard to, put myself in that position.
Hmm.
But again, we're kind of getting there as a culture, which is a little bit sad. But
So sad.
yeah,
Yeah.
tell us, okay, so you go a few years, you guys get married, and
Yeah.
then tell us a little bit more about like the sanctification process from then to
Yeah.
now. How did you end up here about
Yeah.
to open a pregnancy center?
Yeah. Well, yeah. And actually more of so we get married. I'm working in TV. I'm doing like my whole thing, worked at Warner Brothers, the whole nine.
What?
And
There's so much I don't know about you.
I know.
This is also interesting to me. Okay. Hearing this
So
for the
yeah,
first
so
time with everyone else.
I did that. And the Lord was so sweet because he allowed me to not get jobs that I really wanted that would have taken me deeper and further away from him and in hindsight. And so the last job that I had was working at kind of like a video news magazine kind of thing. And I don't know if I'm comfortable saying like the show, but I didn't know if we'd get into this. But anyway, so I was in that and it's just like so dark and
Mm.
no Christians. I mean, I had some amazing people who, like just through Facebook and stuff, still connected, still adore, just think they're great people. They might not know the Lord, they might not believe what I believe, but man, they were just such safe place for me during that time.
Mhm.
And it was just so great. But anyway, so I was in this really dark world, but I'm looking at the people who have the jobs that I wanted. Like I was on track to be a showrunner or to be able to one day be executive producer or something along those lines because that's where my skill set was. But I was looking at them and they were working 12 14-hour days. They had nannies raising their kids. And when I really really looked at what do I want, um, it wasn't that. And so I think we were married 6 months, living in Pasadena in this cute little old apartment. But we were living there, and I am like, I don't want to do this. We have to do something else. So I loved planning our wedding, and I'm like, I'm going to be a wedding planner. So I buy the business of the wedding planner that we have. And because she wanted out, and then I wanted in. And so I
Mhm.
did that. And that was okay. So we were married 6 months and then I found out we were pregnant. So we go through that. We have Charlie. that was great. Everything was wonderful. So then we moved closer to Jesse's family where he was working in, it's called the Inland Empire. It's just a county. But we moved there. That's where the church was. And so we do life there. And then, a couple years go by. I'm giving you like the fast forward version. I get pregnant with Oliver.
Mm-hmm.
So with Charlie, in most pregnancies, you don't even get to see the doctor till like 12 weeks, right? You get an ultrasound maybe at 14 weeks. Maybe they don't do it till 16 weeks. And this was like at the time. Charlie's 19 now. And so, but with Oliver, I got an ultrasound at 8 weeks. And so, I'm looking at this ultrasound. He looks like a Sour Patch Kid, at 8 weeks. They're just like these little gummy bears. And we tape that thing to the fridge. And so we go through the pregnancy. It's just, the second one is harder. I own a business. We're working. We're doing our thing. We're doing life. And so I have Oliver, and life is weird. It's fine. I'm tired. I have postpartum a bit. And it's just hard. Nobody helps you with like the second one the same way they did with the first. It just is how it, like, you're a pro, you've got this, you don't need any help, right? And so I remember sitting in my kitchen, like, counter, and it looked into our galley kitchen. At the very end was our refrigerator, and we still had that ultrasound picture. And I look at it, and then I looked at my 6-month-old at the time. He was just like in the bouncy chair. And then I look at it, and then I look back at him, and it like hit me what I had done to my child 13 years earlier. And I was already wrestling, like, am I really saved? Like, I know the Lord forgave me, but I struggled to forgive myself. Like, it was a spiral. It was a really deep and dark place. And so after that, for a period of time, I spiraled even more. Like, I couldn't get out of bed. I couldn't cope with anything. At one point I told Jesse, I'm like, you need to get me help, because I'm like going to kill your child. Like, because you just have these moments when they're screaming and you're in this really dark place. Like, you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And you just have these crazy thoughts, and they're crazy. And thank God I knew they were crazy, and I was able to bring that to him. But nobody was helping me until then, right? And so it's like I had to say something to him. And so, of course, like the next day we're in the doctor's office and we're getting help and all of that. But the Lord was really sweet to not keep me there for very long. And it was hard. But couple weeks later, I want to say it could have been a month, time is crazy, but I get a letter from my church that went out to every member of the church. And it was talking about post-abortive women getting healing from a Bible study. And when I got this letter, a friend of mine at the church happened to be at my house, and she was a really, really good friend, but she didn't know my story. And so I got the letter, and I'm like, do you know about this? And her husband worked at the church, I think, at the time. And she's like, no, I don't know what it is. So I open it right in front of her, and I read this letter, and I'm like, I think it's time for me to tell you my story. And so the Lord used this tiny church in Southern California, in like such a dark place. And I got complete healing because she encouraged me to go to the Bible study. My husband, of course, encouraged me to go to the Bible study. Nobody else knew. My family didn't know. I think my best friend from college knew. I mean, nobody knew. And so I went to this Bible study, and it completely changed my life. Like, my walk with the Lord. I had gone to like Beth Moore Bible study, just like regular Bible studies where you fall in love with Jesus, but you really don't fully understand why. And it's just great, but it's not deep. And then I go to this Bible study where I'm learning that this thing that has been hanging over me, that Christ died for me in that sin, hung on the cross, knowing what I was going to do, and still chose me to walk with him. Like, it's incredible, because when the book does call abortion murder, and when you realize the full weight of your sin, not just I've lied, not just I've stolen a candy bar, which are all sins. All
Yeah.
of them are sins. They all send us to the same place. But like to know that I killed my child and that Christ redeemed me through his work on the cross, like loves me, saved me, that I have a hope to be with him in heaven and to meet my daughter, like that will just change your entire world and your outlook, right? And
Yeah.
so that's happened. And then I wanted to work, do something. I wanted to serve. And so I co-taught an extra class that they did. And then it just kind of fizzled because our church was so small. And we didn't do another one. But years and years went by. I wanted to work at a pregnancy center or like volunteer. I wanted to do all these things. And the Lord did not allow it. So we moved to Tennessee. I'm 38 years old. Lots of life has gone by.
And what year
And
was this? When did you move here?
2018.
2018.
Yeah, 2018.
Before you move on from that section,
Yeah.
I want to highlight something really quick too for people that I think is important, and I've heard from so many people, is you didn't regret. I mean, you experienced a little bit of regret after the fact, and you walked through this season, but you didn't fully grasp what had happened and the decision that you made. And so I think it's really important for women to hear that, because we're in this culture of shout your abortion. It's not true that women regret this, but it doesn't always happen immediately. And actually, most people I've spoken to that have shared their stories on this show that are post-abortive, that's their story, is it took years for it to, and then they just all of a sudden had this moment where it hit them. And so I just think that's important to highlight. But also, I love how, I mean, even in my own story, I remember a moment, sometimes reading Leviticus can be difficult, but when I read it through the last time, it hit me how that I've actually done something in my story that under the law of Moses would require death. And it really hit me. And it was like a weight where, not in a bad way, but the weight of understanding of how much God has forgiven me. And I think I don't know the verse off the top of my head, but those that have been forgiven much, it's like you just, obviously I wouldn't wish that on anyone to make those types of decisions, but when you've been forgiven much, it really changes you when you can grasp that. And to look at you now and the way that, because you went to that Bible study, because eventually you got to a place where you were willing to open up and share about that, the amount of freedom that you received from that. And so, I just think it's important for women to understand that as well. If they've walked through this or made any decision that you regret deeply, God can give you freedom from that. But very often it requires a step out in faith of being willing to admit it and talk about it with someone.
Yeah. And the statistics on that, I mean, you've probably talked about this. I mean, I've heard 1 or 2 episodes, but just to like reiterate, 1 in 4 women are going to have an abortion by the age of 44. And that's just like one abortion. Many of them will have multiple. And so that's huge. That's a huge statistic. I mean, when I'm talking to big groups or even small groups, and like, look around, 25% of you, that affects a lot of people. And then, not to mention, there is a dad involved, even though they're not allowed to have an opinion, like there is a dad involved. And so it affects so many people. But unfortunately, some churches are a lot better than others. I'm seeing this even more and more, but like our churches aren't talking about this. So like myself, sitting in a chair in a church every single Sunday wondering, well, when he rattles off all those sins that Christ has forgiven, he hasn't mentioned abortion. Maybe I'm not covered. Like maybe that's just a cardinal sin, right? This lie that like there's really only one sin that gets you into hell, and that's rejecting Jesus. So, but when you doubt it, the enemy loves it. But that's what's happening when pastors are not talking about abortion as a sin. And they're just, they talk about pornography all the time, and they can talk about drinking, and they can talk talk about all the, adultery, but they don't. And I think a lot of it is because they don't want to shame people.
Yeah.
And they don't want them to feel bad. But the reality is they're not shaming, they're excluding, and they're making women doubt,
Right.
and men, I'm sure, doubt whether or not what they did is actually covered by the
Yeah.
cross.
Yeah.
So,
Shedding light on it. I mean, that's what
yes,
needs to be done. And that's
that's
what brings
right.
healing for people.
Yes.
I mean, what if we did that with any other sin where we
Right.
don't want to talk about it because we're afraid people will feel bad? Like, well,
Mm-hmm.
you're
Yeah,
supposed to feel conviction over sin. If you never do, then you might not accept the gospel.
that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
there's a
Well,
lot. Yeah. There's a
sorry.
lot where you could say that when it comes to abortion. We don't
Yeah.
do that for any other thing.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So you were talking about moving to Tennessee and what
Yeah.
happened after that?
Yeah. So, here I am in Southern California and not called to work in pro life. And so we were in Tennessee for, okay, so we've been here 8 years. Is that right? Yes. Oh my goodness. So I started volunteering at a local pregnancy center 3 years ago. Yeah, about 3 years ago. And so that was the first time. So it was like 41 and from eight, like that was a long time that I wanted to serve and God didn't call me to it.
Mm-hmm.
But he was preparing me for sure. So um I would go in, and I think they called him a resource coach at the time, and I would go in and I would meet with women, happy mamas, and women who, fewer women that were abortion determined. They just didn't have a lot of those at the time, but I did get called into one of those appointments. And so there's so many times when I can look back where like the enemy was trying to get me to quit that job. I mean, it was a volunteer job. It wasn't a job, but I'd go in once a week, every week, and I could tell like he was trying to get me to quit, and I almost did. I actually had this really, really hard case, and I cried all the way home, and I cry. It's like this time that you are faced with what sin looks like.
Mm-hmm.
There was a woman that, was not mentally well, but she wanted to have babies. She wanted to have something to love her and not take advantage of her. So she kept wanting to have babies, and she couldn't keep her babies. And so I was just sitting there sobbing because this poor woman just wanted something to love, and it was never going to work. And so you just see this like sin at its core, and it just wrecked me. And so I quit. I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. This is too hard. This is ridiculous. And so the next week I went in, but I'm not a quitter, right? So I'm like, I'm going to quit, but I'm going to give you a few weeks to find someone to replace me. So I go in the next week, not looking forward to it, dreading it. And I meet this sweet couple. They were not sweet. They were not so sweet at the time, but they were kind of hard. He wasn't as much as her, but I meet them and we start talking about things like talking to the dead and tarot cards. And we start talking, they're talking about, is the Bible even real? Just all these crazy questions. And the Lord had introduced me to this podcast called Cultish,
Love that show.
Apologia, gotta love them. And years prior to this. And so I would listen to them every single week. And then I listened to them every day, catching up to where they were. And they were going for multiple years before that. And so I had lots of exposure to that world, divination, like just from a biblical worldview. So that's what the
Mm-hmm.
podcast talks about. And so there were these, I learned about Deuteronomy 18, and I learned about what God thinks about necromancy, talking to the dead, like all these things. And so when they were talking to me about all this stuff that they were doing, my response was not, oh, you can't do that. My response was, so how long have you been dealing with sleep paralysis? And their eyes lit up and they were like, wait, how do you know about that? And then I just told them, like, the Lord is like, how long, and so they came, like, super long story, but they came to Christ that day. And the Lord used all that training. None of this was me. all of this training to point me where in scripture to answer their questions, to tell them what God says about the things that they were doing and the things that were happening. These, like, one had known the Lord, he recommitted his life, married couple expecting their first baby, and she came to the Lord. So,
I
like,
have full body chills right now.
he
It's
wants,
amazing.
Satan did not want me to be there,
No.
right? And so, and I'm still in contact with this couple, not nearly as close as I would like to be because I just adore them. But we met every week, and we would sometimes talk about the baby and the pregnancy and all that kind of stuff, but we would talk about Jesus. And that was my favorite time. When I knew they were on the calendar, I was so looking forward to meeting with them. And so that's what I did there. I just met with couples, or I met with moms, or, and just tell them, about Jesus, or they didn't want to talk about Jesus. We would talk about, some video that we had to watch, and it was just not as fun as talking about Jesus. It was like what I did. And then the Lord called me out of it. And it was so frustrating. But I knew where I was going. I went to work at the boys' school, and I knew that's where he wanted. He made it so abundantly clear. And he taught me lots of things, but a door opened to share my testimony to the entire high school. And our school let me show the kids what an abortion was. And like, it was January 16th, and it opened the door to so many things, in that sharing the gospel, bringing post-abortion ministry to our church, just lots and lots of different work that
Yeah.
had I not taken that job, I may have not had that opportunity.
Wow.
And then having incredible conversations with teenagers who then trusted me even more to talk about the crazy things.
Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there as the receptionist, like, let's just talk, and
Right.
it's just crazy because it's like everything points to the sovereignty of God.
Mm-hmm.
He has ordained every single thing. And even, going back to working my time volunteering at the pregnancy center, I'll give you another crazy story. So I get called into, I find out there's this woman that's considering abortion. And, she just made this mistake, and she's freaking out, and she's in college, and she didn't know what to do. But her sister had known about our center. And so she
Mm-hmm.
brought her in. And so I was hearing about these updates and what was going on, and our schedules didn't align. So I couldn't come and see her, even though they asked me to, but I wrote her a letter. And so this went on for weeks. And then finally, I get a phone call and, like, can you come here tomorrow? She said she has the pills and she's making a decision tomorrow night. And so I'm like, yes, absolutely. I will come and meet her. So the nurse practitioner and myself met with her on a day that we were closed. And I just shared my story, and I talked to her. And then, of course, the nurse talked to her and told her what would happen if she took the pills, like, just the honest truth of what goes on. And her mom was there. Like, it was this crazy event. But in the end, I just said, how many appointments do you think that I've had like this? Like, how many people do you think I've ever talked to about this? And she's like, I don't know, like 100. Said, one, you. Her name was the exact same name of the name that I gave my baby.
Mm.
She was the exact same age that my daughter would have been. Very, very much resembled what I imagined her to look like, just based on my boyfriend at the time and all of that. And she was in the same situation that I was in when I chose to not have my baby. And so I told her all of that. I said, the Lord brought me from Southern California to here to meet you, to tell you my story, to tell you that these coincidences are not coincidences, that we were meant to have this moment. And she chose life, and not in that moment, but we found out a couple of days later, and she has maybe, gosh, I don't know about time. I'm really bad with time, but maybe 1.5-year-old, maybe, like,
Yeah.
and her whole life shifted, everything changed. And of course, because she had a baby, but like her entire career changed, like everything that she wanted to do shifted
Mm-hmm.
to helping women and supporting them and their laboring and all that. Like, it's just so cool to see how God works when you walk in obedience to him and you just show up, right?
Yeah.
And he just brings everything to fruition. And that was just one of those moments where I'm like, this is what I want to do forever. But I
Wow.
also want to make it impossible for them to do this. Like, how do we do
Yeah.
that? It's just this
Well,
crazy world.
that's a great segue into the last segment. So, tell us a little bit about Alliance and
Yeah.
how they are unique. And then let's talk about equal protection, because
Yeah.
if anyone listens to this show, this has been a common theme over the last
Yeah.
couple of months of what we've talked about. And, unfortunately, in the pro-life world, if you're not a part of it, you may not be familiar with the conversation, but in the pro-life world, this is really a point of tension and division right
Yeah.
now. And we're talking about, do we really want to end abortion legally? Do we think children in the womb deserve the same protections that a 1 hour old baby deserves? And how do we get there? And that's what I think is really important for us to focus on right now. We both have friends and people in our life that
Yeah.
are on the other side of this. And more importantly than anything that I just said is, what does God say? And that's
Yeah.
always my goal on this show, is to parse that out. What does God
Yeah.
say? What is his word? Is perfect, it's true. He is love, so his commands are love, whether we feel like they're loving or not.
Yeah.
And so that's a lot to cover.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about it for a few minutes. So start with, how you found Alliance and
Yeah.
why they're unique, and then how, as a post-abortive woman, you feel about equal protection.
Yeah. Yeah. So it is a lot. And I met Jenna Cross, our Alliance Family Services, one of the executive directors, her and her husband, executive director or CEO of the organization, which the Lord is so sweet to make people kind of fill those gaps. Like, they do one role and she
Yeah.
does the other role. Anyways, they work great together. But I've known Jenna for years. When I was in network marketing, I was high up in that company, and so was she. And we actually were both invited to a leader retreat in Prague. And so we met
Yeah,
in
I'm
a
jealous. I want to
completely
go to
different
Prague.
country. Yeah, I know. And we meet in a completely different country. Neither of us were doing this work. We didn't talk about pro-life. We talked about Jesus, because there were very few Christians on that trip. So we talked about Jesus, we talked about our family, we talked about our businesses, and we were on like castle day. So we were going to like all these castles. And so we'd sit on the bus and we were talking about these things. And so I just found her to be lovely. We followed each other on social media, and whenever we'd see each other at conventions and things, like, of course, we would talk a little bit. But one day I'm working out and listening to a podcast that I listen to every single week, which was Elisa Childers. And my friend Jenna is on there. I'm like, what is happening? Like, what's even going on? So I'm listening to this episode, and she's talking about her work in the pregnancy world. And I'm like, this is incredible. So I send her a message and I'm like, I'm so proud of you. This is awesome. And, a couple years go on, and I see a post that is an article that she wrote on Christ Overall about equal protection. Like, and I don't remember the title off the top of my head exactly, but the idea was, should women be morally responsible for their abortions? And in fact, that might actually be the title. And I read it and I'm like, I feel exactly like this. And so I didn't know at the time. I think it was maybe a good couple years ago, I figured out, wait, the pro-life movement is against protecting babies in the womb at the legal level. They say that they are for equal protection, like they'll use those words, but they are actively opposing these laws that will equally protect the babies, which would essentially make women liable for their decisions, including aborting their babies. And at first you think like, what does that look like? What is that? But I always thought that was the goal. So just to back up a little bit. So from this day, it was about 14 years ago. And I had, my 2-year-old in the car at the time, and I'm driving. And, it's one of those core memories that you have. Like, you can go right back to that moment. And I remember what car I was driving, the whole nine. And I remember thinking, if abortion had been illegal and I could have been held liable, I never would have had one. And I also remember thinking I'd have a 12-year-old sitting next to me at the time. And so that, of course, formed what I believed everyone believed. Like, it was just, I was naive in that, but it's just what I thought. I never questioned it. I don't even know that I felt at the time that was like, oh, thank you, Lord, for giving me that. Like, it just was this thought. And so
Yeah.
now looking back on it, once this view has been challenged the way that it has, I'm like, no, the Lord absolutely gave me that. Like, there's no reason why I would remember it the way that I remembered it if
Right.
it wasn't important.
Yeah.
And so, especially me, like, I have terrible memory. So I just like I knew that that is what it was supposed to be. And so, when I'm working, I went to March for Life in 2025. I think that was
Wait, are you
that when you went?
serious? I was
Yeah,
there.
you were there, and I didn't know you. I mean,
Right.
but I had heard you talk. So, like, we were both at the Life or Death Con.
In 2025.
Yep.
Okay, we must have talked about this. That is
Yes.
so crazy. Do you know that the first post-abortive testimony I had was another girl? I always say girl, woman. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I don't know why I do that. Woman that was there, and we followed each other on social media. I have no idea how. She lives in, I can never remember if it's North Dakota or Wisconsin, somewhere up there, way far away from me. And a couple days after the fact, she posted that she had been there. And I was like, what the heck?
That's crazy.
So all these people, it's just so
Yeah.
funny how, like I've told you before, that I just feel like God has placed all of these people around me so intentionally. And then, find out we've been at the same places, and I probably saw you walk past you. I mean, I was a greeter, so I could have checked you in, It's just
Totally.
so funny.
It's so great. So when we were there, I kind of always assumed Seth Gruber was, an abolitionist. I had just learned what that word was at
Yeah.
March for Life. So
Okay.
I don't even think I knew that at the time, knew that word. And this article that I talked about with Jenna, that hadn't come out yet. That was in the spring. So we go, and I'm seeing this, like, I felt like the Lord allowed me to see this complete disconnection between in the pro-life movement. Like, I could tell that there was just like some fluff, and I hate fluff. Like, that drives me crazy. Get to
Yeah.
the point,
Yeah.
although people are probably listening to this and being like, girl, you need to get to the point. But
Yeah.
I also think that there was this weird thing around the white rose resistance. Like, people just overall just didn't see, not people that were there. There was a huge presence. Everyone wanted to be with the white rose resistance people, right? With the flags and like the whole thing. But in terms of the leadership, it seemed like there was a separation. And so it was
You
just
mean
kind of like,
between the pro-life leaders and White Rose?
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
just kind of like discombobulated anyway, like
Yeah.
huge Catholic presence, not a whole lot of evangelicals. Just seemed weird. And I couldn't even put my finger on it exactly. But those are the feelings I had when I left. I was with a friend, and I would even talk about that kind of stuff. Like, I just don't know. Something's off. Why we're never going to end abortion if we're not all on the same page. And so, but like, the Lord continued to reveal that, like, not most people in the pro-life movement that work at pregnancy centers, that are working for these huge organizations that people probably follow on Instagram, that they are opposed to equal protection at the legal level. So, meaning that when there are bills that come to your state, so in Tennessee, the bill that you talked about, HB 570, that bill had no consequences on it at all. So, we would hear rumors, we talked about this, where it was like, oh, these people just want women to get the death penalty. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. We are definitely for women. I mean, I hate to be like that bold when I say that, but it is. It's so ridiculous. Like women, first of all, I think there's been like one woman to ever get the death penalty in the state of Tennessee ever. But it's like, it's just so far-fetched. And to know that the bill didn't even talk about women or men like at all, what it talked about was abortion will now be classified as homicide.
Yeah.
And any due process, or what is that, like any of that would
Yeah.
be
The
figured out.
current code would
Right.
still stand. Yes.
Yes. So that was really eye-opening to walk through that, because like you're seeing, okay, you either haven't read the bill or you don't want people to read the bill and you want them to just listen to you because
Yeah.
it's wrong. Like you're propagating lies.
If you have to misrepresent the other side, then you need to do some
Right.
reflecting. Yeah.
Right. And, in this season, we saw a lot of like right to life in one state sitting next to ACLU.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like if you're aligned with the ACLU or Planned Parenthood, you're on the wrong side. Like
Yeah.
it's the wrong side.
Yeah.
So, but when it came down to it, I'd listened to a lot of podcasts of people being interviewed who were on the other side because I did want to
Mm-hmm.
understand. And I even went to my pastor and said, we need to dig into this. I need your help. Like, tell me what I am missing. Why am I one of the few people that I know that believe this, that are working in pro-life? Like, what is happening? Where did we go? We went to the Bible, looked to scripture to find any backing for never holding a woman liable. So, like, we won't even get into incrementalism versus,
Right.
Abolition, because at this point, I feel like my biggest concern is the huge group of people that will stand on the we should never ever hold a woman liable because she's the second victim. Like that's a problem.
Yeah.
So
We'll never end abortion that way then.
we'll
I mean,
never.
it's, I saw a post from Kristen Hawkins,
Yeah.
and, I'm grateful for some of the things that she's done. Obviously, I feel like I always have to qualify that. And I'm not saying everything about Kristen is bad, but, she was talking about we have to protect babies. Okay.
Right.
How do you do that? How do you protect anyone? With the law, with
Right.
consequences. What are we talking about here? Are we talking about some abstract idea? Protect them how? That's the question, right? The only way to protect them is to make it illegal. I mean, because, the Romans, they had concoctions, they had potions in ancient Rome and ancient Greek, methods that they used. And so we can say, well, we need to ban the abortion pill. Well, that's the same logic that the anti-gun people use, is that the guns are the problem. No, guns don't kill people. People kill people.
That's right.
My own grandmother, I mean, sorry to be graphic, but she used a coat hanger to give herself an abortion. If you don't make the actual act of homicide illegal under the law with penalty, then not only are you disobeying God, but you're being completely ineffective and you're basically doing nothing. And so I know that kind of gets into incrementalism, but the point is, until we ban the act, not just the methods, it's never going to end, because we've cultivated this culture of death that tells women it's okay under the law for you to kill your children. And that is what the pro-life organizations are saying, is they agree with Planned Parenthood that a woman should have the right to choose under the law without penalty.
Yeah. I mean, they would never say that. They would never say that they agree with Planned Parenthood in that, but they would just say that she is the second victim, that she doesn't know what she's doing. And so I praise God actually right now in the season that we're in, because I feel like he's really revealing the inconsistency of that idea. Because, Kristen Hawkins, again, I am with you. Like, I love that she gets up and she talks to college students who are honestly being indoctrinated the
Yeah.
other direction, and she takes a lot of heat. And so I am grateful for the work that she does. But what I'm frustrated with her is the inconsistency. Like, to say that women don't know what they're doing and then post videos about women saying what they're doing, they don't regret it, and that they would do it again. Like, that's not consistent, right? So we
Yeah.
have to understand that it's probably like an 80-20 rule, or I would go as like there's probably 20% that don't know what they're doing, or that are like, let's say it the other way. There's 20% that like absolutely know that they are doing what they are doing is murder, like they know it. There's 20 that have absolutely no idea how they even got pregnant. They have no anatomy knowledge at all, and then there's the middle that has been told and deceived, but yet they know, like me. Like, that's how I feel. I feel like I'm in this, like, I was able to do it, and I did
Mhm.
because it was convenient. I didn't want to change my world. I didn't want to be shamed. I didn't want to be that girl. Like, there were all these
Yeah.
things, right? And so I think that that's the majority of culture that we're seeing. Like,
Yeah.
seeing the Memphis girl, at her gender reveal, take abortion
Right.
pills. I thought that
Yeah.
was fake. I did for the longest time. But then I
Yeah.
realized it's not. There are those people, and so we cannot, as like, put our head in the sand and ignore that.
Yeah.
But there's also this, especially with the pregnancy resource centers that are adamantly against bills of equal protection. My heart aches, really, because I know the majority of them are sisters in Christ. Like, I
Mhm.
know that they have a heart for what they're doing, that they want to save babies, that they want to serve women. Like, they think they can hold both at the same level. But I really don't think that it is possible, because in the end, you have to decide, who are you willing to save first? And
Right.
for me, it's always going to be the defenseless baby.
Yeah.
Like, it always is going to be the one that can't make the decision for themselves.
Right.
And so, and the women close second. Like, I wouldn't sign on to open a medical clinic that's going to serve women if I didn't care about women. That makes
Right.
zero sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
And
Well, it's
serve them
co-opting
well.
language. It's
Yes.
co-opting language the same way the left does, and I mean this
Yeah.
with all love and respect, but don't be that person. We are not trying to
Yeah.
criminalize women. We're trying to criminalize abortion or
Right.
murder. But I
Right.
mean, even that word alone, I know we don't want to bombard people with just overly harsh and maybe insensitive at times, but even that word, I think, as a
Yeah.
euphemism, has really desensitized us to what we're talking about. And
Yeah.
the bottom line is, if that is a human being,
Yeah.
then they are equally as valuable as me sitting right here as a 1 day
Yeah.
old baby, as a 2-year old, and they deserve the same protection under the law.
Right.
And so, I appreciate organizations like Alliance, where it says, no, we can be a pregnancy resource center that cares for women, but
Yeah.
ultimately the ones being led to the slaughter are the babies. We
Yeah.
cannot call everyone a victim. We
Yeah.
cannot say everyone is coerced. And even if they are victimized, it doesn't justify murder. And so we
Right.
have to stand in this gap where we get it from both sides,
Yeah.
and we're going to stand on God's word, and that's what we're going to advocate for, because
Yeah.
ultimately, like you said, every post-abortive woman I've spoken to has said the same thing. If this was illegal and I knew
Yeah.
there was a consequence, I never would have done it. And yes,
Right.
there will be women that will still choose it. Of course, there's
Sure.
women that commit crimes every day.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I don't want to
Yeah.
make it safer for someone to commit a crime, especially murder of an innocent child.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a study done out of the University of North Carolina that showed that only 13% of women that are even considering abortion will go to a pregnancy resource center. And in fact, majority of the reason why they don't go to, like, what they said was high in the reasoning of why they don't, is proximity. So
Mm.
I think the idea is that if it were illegal to have an abortion in the law, there would be consequences, just like if you had birthed a child, put it in a bag and threw it in the dumpster, which
Yeah.
women do, and then they're arrested, and then they go through the system, they go through the process, they have a trial. Like, our criminal system is set up for this. But what's
Yeah.
so crazy to me is that, but when it comes to abortion, we can't trust our system. When it
Yeah.
comes to, robbing a bank, we trust the system. When it
Yeah.
comes to other kind of murder, I mean, it's not perfect. Like, it's broken, right? I mean, every
Right.
system is broken, but like, we trust them for other things, but not abortion.
Right.
That to me is like, it's just inconsistent. So if a
Hmm.
man can be held liable for putting abortion pills in a woman's drink and she has, her baby dies, he is prosecuted for murder. Like, he has to go through the system too, same process.
Hmm.
And if he's convicted, how is that different than if she were to drink the same drink and she gets off? Like,
Right.
there is a crime being had. And so there is a whole group of population that just doesn't have to be held liable for that. And then I hear other things like, oh gosh, people have said like, well, they don't know. Women just don't know. And we don't want to create a law against something that people don't know what they're doing, because culture and Planned Parenthood and other abortion clinics and like the left have been telling women for 50 something years that abortion is perfectly normal. No, they've only been able to do that because the law has told them that it is perfectly normal.
Yeah.
Because Roe told them that they could abort their baby in any state. And then some states had restrictions and some states did not, but it was the law that taught them. So, like you said earlier, how do we teach people? We teach them through the law. Like, I don't go rob a bank. Could I use more money? Of course. But I don't rob a bank because, like, I don't want to go to prison. It's against the law. Like, there's so many things that we don't do because
Yeah.
it's against the law. And if somebody, like, I've had people say, well, you break the law when you speed. Like, you're really going to tell me that speeding is the same as murdering a child? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. And I usually get caught actually, but it's just one of those things where it's like we have to just really, and I've said it so many times before, like we really have to wrestle with the fact if we're pro-life, if we stand on that hill, like mountain, right? We're saying we are putting our flag here. We are pro-life. We care about life, but you are against bills of equal protection. We really need to wrestle with, is abortion murder? Is life in, like, is it considered human at conception, a baby? And if it is, why is it okay for the baby in the womb to not have the same protection as the baby outside of the womb? Like,
Yeah.
you have to like really wrestle with that, because if you are not willing, if you're willing to say you want equal protection, you want babies to be protected too, but yet the mother is the only person that cannot be held liable, like we have to figure that out, because as it
Yeah.
stands in all 50 states right now, and we've seen this online recently, but a woman can go to a police station, okay, have abortion pills, say, officer, I am going to kill my baby right now. Take
Hmm.
her abortion pills. He could arrest her, but he's going to have to let her go the next day because no law supports her being held liable in
Yeah.
all 50 states. So, like, make that make sense to me. I
Yes.
feel, like sometimes like I'm taking crazy pills, I'm like, I don't understand. Please explain to me, like, why am I the odd man out? Why do I have to explain my stance and
Yeah.
you don't? But you're saying all the same things. Like, you're saying that we believe abortion is murder, and that we believe the life in the womb is human at conception, and we believe that babies should have equal protection. And yet
Yeah.
you oppose the one loophole, closing that loophole. You oppose it. And
Yeah.
it's, I can't get there, because when I think about what's happening in the pro-life movement, I go to the story of Joshua and the spies. So, like, just for those that don't know, Moses sends out the 12 spies, right, into the promised land. And they're there for 40 days. They're scoping things out, right? Figuring out
Yeah.
how are we going to take over this land that the Lord has promised us. They come back, 10 are freaked out by the giants. They're telling all the Israelites, we are not going to be able to do this. This is going to be crazy. There's just no way. These guys are huge. We're like little ants. There's no way. And then Joshua and Caleb are there and they're going, but y'all, like, God gave us this land. We're going to go into it because he's going to conquer these people. They're like pleading, please, let's do this. We could do this. And what do? They disobey God. And so they
Yeah.
wander in the wilderness 40 years because they disobeyed the Lord. And like, that is literally what I feel like our pro-life stance is. Like,
Yeah.
we're in the wilderness right now.
Right.
And
Yeah.
Joshua and Caleb were the only ones in that generation that were able to go into the promised land.
Yeah. Well, and we can't sacrifice the millions of children
No.
on the altar of, well, maybe one or two women will be wrongfully convicted. Okay, we can't justify that. Like you said, we don't do that with any other crime or sin.
No.
We don't justify rape that way. We don't worry about a man being wrongfully convicted.
Nope.
I mean, obviously, I don't want that to happen. And
Yeah.
if we find out there's an injustice, then okay, let's tackle that also. But that doesn't, it's just the same thing we've heard since we were kids. Like, two wrongs don't make a right.
Yeah.
We can't
Yeah.
we can't do that. And ultimately, as Christians, we can't disagree with God. We can't think that we
No.
know better than him or that we love better than him and stronger than him. It is loving to women
Yeah.
to make this illegal and to do
Yes.
everything in our power to prevent them from doing this and being guilty before a holy and powerful and mighty God someday
Yes.
that they're going to stand before, and to understand that if you have done it, you need forgiveness through Jesus Christ. And
Yes. Well, and I want to point to, because there may be people listening going, but what about the one that's being coerced? Or what about the woman
yeah,
that actually is a victim? And I want to say, like, there are women who are victims. Like, I know one that was taken to Planned Parenthood by her parents. She was pregnant at 17. They forced her to have an abortion. They put her in the car. They said, we will never talk about this again. That woman is a victim. She didn't want to have an abortion. She wanted to have her child. Like, that happens.
right.
But those parents could never be prosecuted for killing their grandchild the way the law is right now. Like, equal protection allows for the people who are really participants in the crime to be held liable. If
Yes.
a boyfriend forces, or whoever, because abortion, the way that it is set up, our law is set up, actually favor the criminal in it, because a lot of times, women are in trafficking, or women are, going through all this terrible stuff. Like, these people are going to be held liable because it is perfectly legal for them to coerce a woman to do something that is legal for her to do. And
Yeah.
so we have to recognize that the law, the way that it is set up, it does not protect women at all,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
babies, but for sure it does not protect women.
Yeah, absolutely. So let people know where they can follow you guys and support what you're doing.
Yeah. So you can go, we're on all the social media, Alliance Family Services, and our clinics also have an account, Alliance Women's Clinics. Of course, that's like client facing. If you want to support us, you can go to alliancefamilyservices.org. And
We'll link it also in the show notes. So.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
if you want to learn more, like, you currently right now, you can follow me on Instagram. At some point I might have to go back to private lands, but right now it's public, and trying to just get out there all the things that are, happening. And then of course just live my life. But yeah, I'm Alliance Family Services. We were opening the 10th clinic in Lenoir City, Tennessee. And so excited about that. And we have clinics popping up all over the country. And there is a way to do this and hold both things true, where we want to end abortion and also serve. I think of it like an ER, right? Like, it's triage. This is the circumstance that we're in right now. We need to address these women and help them and support them and speak truth to them and love them. But we also very much need to support them we are not doing legislative work as an organization, but we support it. We are for equal protection.
Yes.
And so I think that that is really important, because I do think that there are people who are working in the pro-life movement and in pregnancy help organizations that do actually think this way, but they don't see how it can be done well. And so, we would love to always talk with anyone, and we do get on the phone and talk to anyone about that. And Jenna will talk to anyone that has questions.
Yeah.
But also, I would just say Foundation to Abolish Abortion is an incredible organization, and they're doing a lot of great work with equal protection. But they
Hmm.
just put out a FAQ for pregnancy help organizations, and it really answers all the questions that I have been asked by other directors, saying, well, what about this? And you really need to think about this, and you really need to think about that. Well, it answers all of those questions in a
Yeah.
really, really clear way
Hmm.
and a biblical way. And so a lot of times the pro-life movement will quote John 8, the adulterous woman or the woman at the well. And the reality is like neither of those stories actually point to the law. And the adulterous woman actually points more to equal protection than it does to not. And
Yeah.
so we always have to remember that God is love, and he is mercy, and he is grace, but he's also just.
Hmm.
And he is all those things equally. And so we cannot lose sight of that. And
Yeah.
I think that's something that our world wants to be merciful and compassionate and loving, but we forget that it's not us giving that mercy; it's God. And
Yeah.
so we what we are called to do is be love, yes, but also truthful. And I would
Yeah.
love the day when I can sit with a woman who's really struggling with her unplanned pregnancy and say, like, let us help you. It is illegal for you to do this. Please let us help you.
Yeah.
And I think we always forget, like, adoption is actually an amazing, amazing, redeeming opportunity for women to be able to put their baby first. Not that it's easy, but I promise you, it's got to be easier than killing your baby. And you don't think in that moment that it is going to be. Looking back on it, like, it is. And I'm not naive to think that it's so easy to give your baby away.
Yeah.
But gosh, to be able to save that life, it's a lot less regret than when you can't go back and change things. So I
Yeah.
just think we need to look at this whole thing so holistically, and so through the lens of scripture
Yes.
and through God's
Absolutely.
word. And I'm so grateful that the Lord introduced us, because it's so refreshing to have someone else. I mean, we're surrounded by many people who agree at this point, but like,
It can
just
feel like a desert, a
yeah,
wilderness of
it
its own
can.
sort, for sure.
Yeah,
Yes, I'm
you
so
lose
thankful to know you
friends,
guys.
you have people call you crazy, and you're too much. You start to kind of believe it until you have those people that's like, no, 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 no,
Yes.
keep going. I have a
Yes.
pastor who's so great and pours into me so much, and he tells me all the time, stay on your wall, Breanne. Like, he says that, like, we're the story of Nehemiah, where we're building something but also defending it at the same time. And so stay on your wall. And it's like, yes, okay, Lord, you call people to things that are not easy. And when you are being attacked the way that we have faced in our two different stories, but very much similar, you realize, well, yeah, we're facing that because we're doing the right thing. Like, the
Yeah.
Lord is Satan hates what we do every single day.
Yes.
And I
Hmm.
remind coworkers, and we're going to have a sign once our clinic is open that says, make Satan mad that you woke up today,
Yeah.
because that's the goal. Like, we're not in this world to be friends with Satan. And a lot of Christians forget that, unfortunately. And so sometimes we're faced by people that believe what we believe, kind of being the ones to say, no, you're wrong, and go, this is what the Lord has showed me, and this is what I'm doing. And so just keep
Yeah.
feeling, really confident in that. And it's not an easy place to be, but, have joy in all circumstances and all things. And so that scripture in James really came really real the last few months. And so if we can have joy of the Lord while, being, kicked on the, in the other side, like that's just Jesus. And so
Yeah.
we're going to go and do that every single day. And I'm so proud of the work that you're doing too. And you're doing the same thing. So thanks
Well,
for
thank
having me.
you. Yeah, it was such a pleasure having you on. We'll be praying over your ministry, and
Thank
I'll
you.
link all of these things in the show notes so people can go and support you. So
Thank you so
thank you
much.
so much.
Yeah.